بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين، واللعنة الدائمة الأبدية على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. السلام عليكم my beloved ones ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah, we are going to continue the Bahth of Sayyid Al-Khouei قدس سره. We may not be able to take much more today. However, we'll try our best to cover a few things which were left in our previous session. So this will be our fifth session. Just a quick reminder about the just a quick reminder about the sequence of Dalil al-Aqli. If you go to the book of Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr, rahmatullah alayh, in Ilm al-Usul, in al-Halaqat, and you will see the sequence of Dalil al-Aqli. So we have this mawdu', which are the conditions that activates the ruling. The ruling is there, obligation is there, but it is a floating obligation. Then it becomes activated. So then we have the activation. After the activation, we have the obligation to perform the action. However, this floating obligation, like Hajj is wajib on every Muslim, but actively, it is not wajib on a child or on somebody who does not have the financial capacity. So then there is this mawdu', the condition. So if someone has reached the age of puberty and A, B, C, D's, all these conditions, and one of them is has the financial capacity or the over and all general capacity to perform the obligation of Hajj. And that is where the once the mawdu', the conditions are available, then the obligation becomes activated. Now a person has to go for Hajj. So this is activation. So this is mawdu', this is hukum. And then there is this muta'alliq al-hukum, that means the action which is associated with the hukum. That means the wajib. So this is wujub, the hukum, and this is wajib, the action itself. So if the wujub, if the hukum becomes activated, the wajib needs to be performed. So this was the sequence we had discussed before. And in the case of this, our ijtihad and taqlid and ihtiyat, we said these are tools to have the knowledge of the responsibility, that you have fulfilled the responsibility or you have not fulfilled the responsibility. So fulfilling the responsibility is done either by ihtiyat, taking precautionary measures, or by ijtihad, trying to find out by yourself, you doing the demonstrative jurisprudence, or deducing the laws from its resources, or by the uh, by the taqlid, if you are not able to do the ijtihad. So this is the responsibility, that the knowing the religious responsibility is obligatory. Why is it obligatory? We said because there is this so everyone is responsible for knowing the responsibility. So okay, but which way are we responsible or are we not responsible? Is there براءة or احتياط؟ اشتغال اليقين يستدعي الفراغ اليقيني. So we are trying to seek the method. So once this is the prerequisite of the mawdu'. Once we realize that the concept of maslak haqq ta'a, biological and intellectual evidences, that my responsibility towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, my master, is to make sure that my the responsibility, my the whatever I am required, okay, I have to fulfill. Even if I have not a decisive knowledge, I have a probable knowledge. So I am responsible to fulfill that probable knowledge by taking one of the actions, either precaution, either making the probability into certainty, or no, if I cannot find out the probability if I cannot convert my probability to certainty by performing ijtihad, then I need to reach the certainty by following someone who has already reached the certainty, and that is taqlid, to refer to someone who has reached the level of certainty. So I have these three methods which will relieve me from the responsibility. So, okay. So once maslak haqq ta'a, once you have reached that, it is the maslak haqq ta'a which you are supposed to uphold to, then the activity, then it becomes obligatory upon you to find out what is your responsibility. So once you have the knowledge of the responsibility. So that is because maslak haqquta. So maslak haqquta is the condition or the mawdu' which makes the which makes the obligation which makes upon me which makes the obligation become activated to seek the responsibility. What type of obligation? Obligation to seek the knowledge about the responsibility. So now I have to take some necessary means and measures. Like, for example, if I'm planning to do ihtiyat, then I need to find out the alternatives, the probabilities. If I'm trying to do ijtihad, then I need to go to Hausa. That is the prerequisite of ijtihad. And if I cannot go to Hausa and I cannot do the precautionary measures, then the only option, intellectual option for you to fulfill your responsibility is taqlid. So see, there is no hadith in this sequence. It is all religious responsibility based on logical argument. Okay, what about maslak haqq? Maslak haqq by itself sorry, maslak haqq by itself is based on logical argument. Remember the probability, but we are the creation of the master, and my master requires that we serve him even if we are not sure, and we have probability, then we have to go with this probability and serve him and try to make sure that we are not going to go against any probable responsibility. So that is there. So there is no hadith in this section. So that's why it is wujub aqli. Okay, not wujub ghairi. Okay, not wujub. So it is not wujub shar'i, because Sayyid al-Khouei, for him, he has not used any religious evidences. He has not used the ayat in this section. Yes, he uses the ayat later on to echo and to support what was found or concluded by logical argument, by logical premises. So therefore, no ayat was used, no hadith were used here. So therefore, it is not a dalil shar'i, it is not religious responsibility. And if it is not, if a dalil shar'i is not used, then the issue of mawdu'iyya and tariqiyya has gone away, because mawdu'iyya and tariqiyya is understood by the text of the religious evidences. When religious evidences, when so mole ro'yat comes, fast for when it's citing, and break your fast for is citing. So this citing is taken out from the religious evidences. So the question comes, is citing the aim or the mean? So, okay, it is tariq or the main obligation is to cite. Or no, it's tariq. No, the main obligation is to find out that the month has entered with whatever means, and this citing is mentioned based on an example only, or a mean. So see, the language of the Sharia makes me go to these directions where mawdu'i tariqi. So there is the dalil shar'i which we are discussing. But what if there is no dalil shar'i? Then this mawdu' and tariq does not come, because I don't have a text religious text which can be understood either this or either that, either the mawdu'i, either tariqi. So that is that is the argument of not being tariqi. What about ghairi? Ghairi, if we are going to use dalil aqli as a ghairi, okay, then again there needs to be certain element of dalil shar'i which indicates, which makes the prerequisite, because the ghairi means it can't be false here. Muqaddimatul wajib wajib, muqaddimatul haram haram. So has the Sharia presented certain obligation that the prerequisite of that religious obligation would be obligation? No, we are not talking about the religious obligation at all. We are talking about taqlid, ihtiyat, or ijtihad as intellectual options. So if there is going to be something which is going to be prerequisite, it is not related to dalil shar'i, because there is no religious obligation here which requires this kind of intellectual option. We are all talking about intellectual evidences. So if hypothetically, if someone would argue that it is what about, isn't it dalil like, for example, reading the book of law for taqlid, or finding the probabilities for ihtiyat, or entering the house of foreign. These are prerequisites. These are muqaddimah. And if seeking the responsibility is wajib, then this muqaddimah is wajib, correct? If you would argue that, but then that will be purely for the dalil al-aqli, not for dalil shar'i. Okay, what we are trying to discuss here, that is it dalil shar'i which obligates the for the finding out the responsibility, or it is dalil aqli which obligates. We said that dalil shar'i has no place here. It's all dalil aqli. So let's say if you want to consider this as a connection or a prerequisite for finding your religious responsibility, either to taqlid, ihtiyat, or ijtihad, then that is going to be purely associated with dalil aqli and not shar'i. So this is something which I want you to keep this in your mind, this sequence, because still we are discussing the words of Sayyid al-Khoei Quddus Sirruh. So وكذلك, we discussed the ihtiyat. We said this ihtiyat, if it is, then it is an intellectual ihtiyat, and not the one which is above the legislation, about the activation of the hukum. No, that ihtiyat is different. That's ihtiyat led us to maslak haqqu ta'a. That's a foundation. This ihtiyat is practical ihtiyat on the level of practicality. It's one of the options, one of the three options. That one on the top was maslak haqqu ta'a. You will say it is also ihtiyat, yes, but that ihtiyat is different. That ihtiyat is trying to find out what is my responsibility towards my master, not if I have the knowledge about my or a probability about a responsibility, then I have to fulfill it through either repeating it if something had to like qasr and tamam, or avoiding it if the probability was between haram and makruh, or performing it if the probability was so that one is on the level of finding out which routes intellect tells me to take, ihtiyat or bara'a. That ihtiyat is not this ihtiyat. Many of our participants, they get mixed up. Okay, that's ihtiyat, then this is ihtiyat. No, this ihtiyat is to fulfill the responsibility, the probable responsibility. That ihtiyat was a path, a route, that which route I am required intellectually towards my master Mawla. If you still are confused, please go back to our previous recordings. And then here we come to Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So we discussed the ihtiyat. Now, what about Sayyid al-Khouei? Isn't ijtihad and taqlid based on religious evidences? He said, no. Similarly, وَكَذَلِكَ الْإِجْتِهَادُ وَالتَّقْلِيدُ. It is not based on religious evidences. It is all going to go under the issue of maslak haqq al-ta'a. Same thing. Here we have maslak haqq al-ta'a, okay, which was same like before. But what happened that previously we had ihtiyat also, because we're discussing ihtiyat. Now I have just removed the ihtiyat and kept ijtihad or taqlid. So what is ijtihad of taqlid? He says, عبارتان عن العلم بالأحكام ومعرفتها. The knowledge of the Islamic law, or knowledge of the rulings, okay? My responsibility. I need to know the ruling of my responsibility. Is it wajib or makruh? Is it wajib or mustahab, haram or makruh? Or is it like I have to do the what they say, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, qasr or tamam. So I need my knowledge. So he says ijtihad is knowledge. Why? Because you're finding out from the ahadith of Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam your responsibility. Taqlid is knowledge. If you are not doing ihtiyat, you're referring to someone who's professional in knowing the religious responsibility. So here he says, وَكَذَلِكَ الْإِجْتِهَادُ وَالتَّقْلِيدُ لِأَنَّهُمَا فِي الْحَقِيقَةِ عِبَارَتان عن العلم بالأحكام ومعرفتها. Actually, these two are knowledge. These two are having the knowledge about the religious responsibility, about the religious ruling, or knowing your responsibility. ولا يكون معرفة حكم أي موضوع مقوما لوجود ذلك الموضوع ومقدمة لتحققه. What does that mean? That means that ولا يكون معرفة. اجتهاد التقليد معرفة of knowing the religious ruling. Where does it fall? Again, back to our sequence. It is all the way down. Okay, it is your action. It is your action. Having the knowledge is your action. So it says it is the effect. It cannot be the cause of its cause. It cannot go above the religious activation. It cannot go above the activation of ruling. Okay, this is a production. This is an effect of the religious ruling or the obligation. So there is an obligation, activation of obligation that pushes you to know either through taqlid, either through ihtiyat, either through ijtihad. So ijtihad and taqlid are not having knowledge. Ihtiyat was still in the world of probabilities, but now you have knowledge. Ibaratan anil ilm. You have a knowledge. Be what? Bil ahkam. So this is the ijtihad and taqlid are in the base. It's an effect. It cannot go above the ruling. Very technical thing. It cannot go above the activation and impose on that level that, okay, since I ijtihad is wajib, then no, it cannot be above. It is below. What some might put is that they might put it. Let me just show you from the rasma. Okay, that see, this is the not ijtihad and taqlid. They are all the way in the base. They are effect of what? The cause. What is the cause? The activation. He says they cannot, ijtihad and taqlid, they cannot make seeking the knowledge an obligation. Why? Because they're the production of obligation. After knowing by dalil al-aqli, you have to know your responsibility. Then you are obligated to do either ijtihad or either taqlid. You see? So it's not other way around. It's not the other way around. It is obligation that pushes you to do ijtihad or taqlid. It is not the ijtihad and taqlid which makes knowing your religious responsibility obligatory. It's not like that. See, some of them they might okay, ijtihad and taqlid is here. Oh, okay, it is ijtihad and taqlid which makes I have to do ijtihad and taqlid. No, why are you saying I have to? You are this area is the area of condition. Why are you making ijtihad and taqlid a condition which will activate the obligation? That doesn't make any sense. On the contrary, because you're seeking responsibility, because maslak haqq al-ta'a obligates upon you to seek knowledge about your responsibility. And seeking knowledge of your responsibility has three paths. Here we are talking about two paths today, ijtihad and taqlid. It's not the other way around. Reflect on this, okay? It's not, you cannot put them on the top. This is the production. So ولا يكون معرفة حكم أي موضوع. This one. ولا يكون معرفة حكم. Okay. This is the ruling of this topic, this subject. معرفة حكم أي موضوع مقوما له. You cannot bring it up and strengthen the obligation using ijtihad and taqlid. You cannot bring ijtihad and taqlid up. No, maslak haqq al-ta'a is muqawwim. Maslak haqq al-ta'a is your foundation, which makes an obligation to know your responsibility. And knowing your responsibility pushes you to either do ijtihad or taqlid or ihtiyat. Here today we are discussing about the knowledge, and that is not probability, that is ijtihad and taqlid. Okay, so he says لوجود ذلك الموضوع ومقدمة لتحققه. How are you making it prerequisite? It cannot be a prerequisite. It is a production of the ruling. Ijtihad and taqlid is the production of an obligation. Obligation, ijtihad, taqlid. You cannot bring ijtihad and taqlid up and push maslak haqq away and you say, because ijtihad and taqlid is wajib. But what made it wajib? Where is the condition which makes ijtihad and taqlid wajib? No, just keep it here. Yes, the obligation to know the responsibility, okay, is a production of maslak haqq ta'a. Because maslak haqq ta'a, it's an obligation on me to know my responsibility, and knowing the responsibility is either done by A, B, C, ijtihad, taqlid, ihtiyat. In today's case, we are discussing ijtihad and taqlid. So, بحيث لا يتيسر صدور ممن لا يعلم بحكمه. Ijtihad and taqlid, okay, cannot come up. Okay, it has to be down. Why? Because ijtihad and taqlid is not depending on the obligation. The obligation is pushing you to do ijtihad and taqlid. So what if there was no obligation? Would taqlid be haram? Oh, no one says taqlid will be haram if it is following the criteria of the intellectual society. Or would ijtihad be haram? Research? Who would make research haram? There are people that are non-followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. They're doing PhDs on the Shia Islamic law in some universities like Exeter and in some places around the world. They have this department of Shiology and Shia law and all those kind of things. And you will say, you see, they have studied Ilm al-Usul and all the Hausa studies, but on their academic realm, they have studied the Shaykh Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr and Rahmatullah alayhi and all these things. So the idea here is that anyone can do ijtihad. Even if it is not wajib, you can do ijtihad. Anyone can do taqlid. Anyone can do it. So ijtihad is available even if it was not wajib. Anyone can do ijtihad. But this wajib, what does it do? It makes it compulsory upon me to do ijtihad or taqlid or ihtiyat. Without the wajib, take the wajib away. Can somebody do ijtihad? Yeah. Can somebody do ihtiyat? Yeah. Can somebody do? Yeah. But will it be wajib? It will not be wajib. It will not be wajib. So therefore, ijtihad and taqlid and ihtiyat, they are the production of the obligation. And they can exist without the obligation. Just a second. Yeah, I'm in the class. No problem. Okay, so that is why now focus these sentences. بحيث لا يتيسر صدوره ممن لا يعلم بحكمه, in a way that it's not like ijtihad and taqlid and ihtiyat cannot be performed without knowing its ruling. It can be performed. But what Maslak Haqq al-Ta'a has done has made it obligatory to either this. But without Maslak Haqq al-Ta'a, it's available. Okay, so we are not talking about the existence of ijtihad and taqlid and ihtiyat. We are talking about it being obligatory or not. And that is on the level above. Okay, he gives an example here. هذا كرد السلام. It is similarly to saying wa alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah. So let's say I don't know that responding to the salam is wajib. Okay, I don't know the hukum. I don't know the obligation. See, the obligation is there. What makes this responding to salam obligation? The salam itself. Somebody says salams to you, that's a condition. Then it becomes wajib upon you to respond. Activation. What is the obligation? Activation of obligation, responding. And what is the production? Saying wa alaykum assalam. You see, wa alaykum assalam. When does it become wajib? When somebody says salams to you. So that's the muqaddima, that's the mawdu' condition. And that condition is exists. The rule of responding to salam becomes obligatory. When it becomes obligatory, then the action of wa alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah becomes obligatory. So he says, let's say there was no obligation. I did not have the knowledge that responding is obligatory. Can I say wa alaykum assalam? Yeah. Can wa alaykum assalam exist without the obligation? Yes, it can exist. Okay. You can say wa alaykum assalam. If there is somebody saying salams to you, somebody says sabah al khair, good morning. You say wa alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah. Does wa alaykum assalam require an obligation for its existence? No. But when it becomes obligatory, it becomes necessary to exist. But if it is not obligatory, can it exist? Yes, it can exist. So he says, ممكن الصدور ممن لا يعلم بحكمه. The wa alaykum assalam can exist, okay, without having the knowledge of its ruling. وكذلك الحال في غيره من الواجبات. Similarly, the situation is for other obligations, other obligatory acts. إذ يمكن أن يأتي بها المكلف. Salat, children, they are not obligated to offer salah. Do they pray or not? Yeah, they pray. We see our children, we train them to pray and they pray. So the salat can exist without the hukum of obligation being activated. But when it is activated, then you must make sure that salat exists. So he says, إذ يمكن أن يأتي بها المكلف ولو على سبيل الاحتياط. Even though it's not wajib, you doubt, you can bring it on the basis of a precautionary measure. من دون أن يكون عالما بحكمها. Without knowing, without having the knowledge of the obligation. Okay? So the action can exist without having the knowledge of its obligation or its ruling. فلا يتوقف وجود الواجب. This one, تقليد احتياط and تقليد and احتياط and اجتهاد, it is not depending in its existence on the wajib. However, if wajib happens, then you must make it exist, one of the three. معرفته فلا يتوقف وجود الواجب على معرفته بالاجتهاد أو التقليد. So the existence of wajib is not depending on ijtihad and taqlid, is not depending on the knowledge of the responsibility, knowledge of the obligation of the responsibility. No, it can exist. Ijtihad can exist. Taqlid can exist without knowing its obligation. So therefore, but once it becomes obligatory, then you have to make sure that you bring it into existence. نعم، لا يتمكن المكلف في بعض الموارد من الإتيان بالعمل إلا إذا علم بما اعتبر فيه من القيود والشروط. However, he says there are some cases where the whole structure cannot be performed, cannot be existed without knowing its conditions and prerequisite conditions. Okay, it does not exist. Like, for example, I don't know whether we can consider the salat without wudu, because wudu and salat, they both are connected. There's a condition of wudu for the salat to exist. So let's say if you did not perform the wudu and you had this invalidation of wudu, can salat exist? Salat as a salat? No, it cannot exist. But I can do subhanallah, but that is not salat. That is, salat is a namaz or salat or prayer, daily prayer is a religious act. Okay? It cannot exist without wudu. What if I just say Allahu Akbar and I have not do wudu, subhanallah? That is not salat. That is some actions you did which resembles the salah, but that is not salat. You see, so there are things where they are interconnected with other things in order to exist. For example, even salat, takbiratul ihram. Without takbiratul ihram, you recite Surah Al-Fatiha, and you did have your wudu. Went to ruku' and sujood. Did you do salat? No. No, but I did the salat, the whole thing, and I had wudu. Yeah, but you did not, you left a rukun min arkan as-salah, one of the pillars of salat, and that is Allahu Akbar, takbir al-ihram. So they said, don't say that salat exists without its conditions and prerequisites. Yes, if you perform the whole thing, then it may exist. But let's say one of the conditions of salat is entrance of time, and the time did not enter. So you offered the salah with wudu, with all the things. Is your salat, did you perform the salat? No, it's invalid. It is as if you did not. So the existence of salat itself cannot exist independently, like wa alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah. Okay? You can say wa alaykum assalam, and it's considered, oh, he is given wa alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah. Okay, child tells you salam or something like that, and you said wa alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah, and it was not wajib upon you. But it existed, yeah, it existed. But the compound obligation, like Hajj and like Salah, they are depending on lots of conditions and prerequisites and a lot of interconnected prerequisites and conditions. You can bring their actions, but it will not be considered that the Salat existed. كما في الموضوعات المركبة, as he says, as in the compound subjects, okay, such as Salat and Hajj. فإن الجاهل بأحكامها غير متمكن على إصدارها. If somebody who is not aware about its ahkam, its conditions, if he's going to pray, his prayer is going to be invalid. That means as he did not pray, that means the salat did not exist, or the hajj in this case as well. إلا أنه من الندرة بمكان. In very rare cases, some of these compound, we're talking about compound obligations, you might be able to perform, and your responsibility might be fulfilled. But in this case, you are not able to fulfill them, perform them, when you have a compound constructed action of obligation. I think, yeah, we are going to discuss in our next session. It's going to be after Ashura. So next week that we don't have any session. We want everyone to dedicate their time and self in the majalis of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam. And we are going to discuss that. Is it tariqi or not? It is not tariqi. Why? This is going to be discussed in our upcoming session. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله